Hello and welcome back to Studio 77. On this video, I'm going to take you through how to make the Drawn to It pouch, but we're going to be using a clear TPU vinyl and a frosted jelly vinyl on the bottom. This is the Drawn to It pouch, like I say, which is a pattern from me at Studio 77. You can find a link to this pattern in the description below. I have made this video because one of my club members was asking me how to use these two materials, these two types of fabrics together with this pattern. So I thought I'd show you, take you along with me as I make this as a gift and show you some of my hacks. Now, like I say, this is the frosted jelly. It's kind of, well, it is a plastic and it has different names: TPU, frosted jelly, frosted vinyl. And then this top one, I'm using this clear vinyl, like I say. Along with that, obviously, I've got my zipper. I am also going to be using something to mark the fabrics with. Now, when I was cutting this out, what I like to do, because it does mark, and you're going to see it, I like to just mark the corners. So it's probably easier to show you on here. Maybe you can see there's a little black mark there. So I just mark the corners, and then I use a ruler to line that up and cut it. That way you're not marking all the way around the outside. I do the inside as well in the same way. I was using a Sharpie, and then I realized I had one of these China markers, which are really, really useful for this because the marks will rub off, whereas obviously a Sharpie will not. Also going to be sewing with my trusty double-sided sewing tape. You definitely want to use the sewing variety. And then also I'm going to be using silicone oil, which was recommended to me from Kim at Cascona Designs. It really helps your machine to glide over those tricky fabrics. I'm also going to be using a Teflon foot to help me glide over these fabrics. I am using a HD9 machine, semi-industrial machine, but if you're using a regular domestic machine, you may want to use a Microtex or a Super Universal needle to get through these fabrics as well. Now, one thing that I like to do if I'm using a non-fraying fabric that I'm not going to be binding or lining, I like to bind the edge of my zip tape. So to do this, I have cut out 2 strips of the TPU Frosted Jelly, and I have cut these to be 3/4 of an inch wide by the length of the zipper. I'm going to start off by binding the edges of the zipper before we attach it to the pouch. So I've got my pull attached. I'm going to lay on some of the double-sided tape, and I'm going to lay that on to each side, top and bottom of the zip tape. Cannot stress enough how useful and brilliant sewing double-sided tape is, especially for these tricky to use fabrics. Now, before you do this, by all means, mark a line down the middle with something that is removable. It would need to be a China marker or something similar, or you could mark on the actual zip tape with a friction pen or a fabric marker. But I'm going to lay this on so that it is around about halfway down the middle of the TPU strip, or the jelly strip. And you want to spend some time getting this as neat as possible. Flip it over and fold it and add it to the back. Then I'm going to grab one of my top pieces of my Drawn to It pouch, and then I'm going to lay some double-sided along and place the frosted jelly edge over the top. This is when these longer clips come in handy, but I do need to have them on the other side so that I can quickly switch them around to be covering over the TPU as well. And the double-sided tape should hold it just enough for you to get it over to the machine. Okay, so now I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew it along the top edge and the bottom edge of that bound frosted vinyl. I'll put a little bit of this silicone oil all over so that it can glide easier. Now, adding this TPU to the top of the zipper is not for the faint-hearted. So if you are more of a beginner, then you may want to consider using either a faux leather or fold over elastic or even bias binding for this top edge if you want to bind the top of your zipper or the edges of your zipper. Now, something that is quite interesting about using TPU and the frosted vinyl and all the different vinyls is sometimes it can mess up your tension on your machine. And I actually just found that I had to redo that top stitching because it all really pulled underneath. Now remember, if you're getting nesting underneath, that means it's the top thread which is not quite working well. So I just upped my tension dial by 2 times. I think I did 2 complete turns, and that fixed the problem. If you're having problems like that, just stop, figure it out, and then get back on the machine, and usually you can go back over those holes. TPU and all these vinyls are a lot more forgiving than the regular faux leathers, so you have got a chance to make it right. You can't even see that that is a second attempt. Right, next I'm going to go ahead and do exactly the same with the other side on the zipper and the other top side of that clear TPU. Now it's definitely harder doing that second side because of course you can't put the clips in to hold it in place. So just double check that you're all lined up as good as you can on the other side, and then I'm going to top stitch that just like I did on the other side. Okay, now that the zipper is attached, we're going to attach it to our base. So I'm going to place it so that it's right sides together, or you can, if you prefer, lay it over and do 2 lines of stitching. I'm going to clip it together along that top edge, the opposite side to where the zip is. Also going to clip it along the other edge. So now I'm going to stitch along those 2 edges. Now I actually want to have it so that there is top stitching on the outside, so I'm going to undo my zip as much as I can. You may want to baste that end so you don't pull your zipper off, or you could take your zipper completely off and put it back on in a minute. But I'm going to open it as much as I can, and then I'm going to flip the seam allowance so it's going towards the frosted vinyl, and I'm going to top stitch along that edge, and I'm going to do the same on the other side and along this edge. Make sure my zip's still okay, and I'm going to feed in the teeth at the end. To do that, I just kind of splay the teeth and feed them in every other tooth so that it stays together. Now the Drawn to It pouch does actually have tabs on the end. I'm not going to put tabs in here because I'm worried about the thickness and the TPU with my machine, but by all means, if you want to, you can add those in. So now we're just going to carry on with the bag, just like we would do normally. I'm going to actually leave my zipper closed because I know that this zip I can undo from the back. If you have a locking zip, you're going to want to make sure that that is open at this stage. All there is to it is to stitch up the two ends and to box the corners. Now, something that I hadn't thought of or anticipated is that I have lost some of the seam allowance along that edge because I put the zipper over the top, of course, rather than stitching it with a regular seam allowance. So that means that I've got a little bit of excess here, so I can just cut that down. It's probably very hard for you to see because it's clear, but I can just cut that down so that I can box the corners successfully, like so. So I'm just going to trim those seam allowances down, neaten it up. Then I can open up my pouch and turn it the right way up. So as you can see, the finished version is a little bit wider than the original, and that is of course because I didn't take off that seam allowance. What can I say? It's a last minute gift. I'm filming this late at night. However, I do hope you have picked up some tips and tricks along the way, and hopefully inspire you to make your own Drawn to It pouch. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope that you've loved this tutorial. Please do let me know in the comments below what you think of this, and you can find lots of more tutorials over on my channel. I'll see you on the next tutorial.